What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to White Sox Daily once again. Another day of what has been a bit of a slow news cycle here in November, but obviously that's the MLB season in early winter. Obviously, free agency in full swing, but not quite as off the presses, hot and ready as, say, an NFL early free agency. The White Sox have made one signing thus far, Anthony Kay, officially on the roster. We've heard rumors here and there, Luis Robert trade rumors every single day. It seems like we got a new team here, another team there. Today it was the New York Mets being reported as checking in, being very interested in the potential of adding Luis Robert from the White Sox, and the White Sox still are not necessarily trying to speed through that process, still not really committing to the fact that they want to move Luis Robert. So we won't even count that anymore, lest we bore you with the 74th straight day of Luis Robert trade talks. But we are going to take a quick look down the lane of what the White Sox plan to do with the starting rotation this year. We've heard a couple of the rookies mentioning that they've got big plans to be up in the major league roster to make their MLB debuts as soon as this coming year. McDougal, obviously, most recently saying that. A couple of other guys, some rising prospects. Davitt's been spectacular, especially just playing in the fall league down in Arizona, and some other big time prospects as well. Shane Murphy was excluded from the 40-man roster, which shocked a lot of people. So maybe not going to be seeing him in a speedy fashion if he survives the Rule 5 draft. But yeah, obviously a lot of big-time prospects. We haven't even mentioned Noah Schultz yet and Hagen Smith, who are obviously way up at the top of the White Sox prospect rankings. A lot of guys that the White Sox feel strongly are going to be very soon ready to come contribute at the major league level. But where does that leave a White Sox starting rotation that sent out 18 different starting pitchers last season? Obviously, you got to feel like Shane Smith's pretty much a lock, that he'll be there. They just signed Anthony Kay. I can't imagine they're bringing him in to come out of the bullpen based on the 2-year deal they gave him and based on him being a solidified starter both in his last MLB stint and when he left and was playing over in Japan. Davis Martin, obviously, probably going to be locked up in there. Jonathan Cannon, I mean, probably Jonathan Cannon's going to be a part of that starting rotation. So then, I mean, you've got a little bit of wiggle room there. I think Sean Burke will probably be that fifth guy. Then you got a couple of guys coming back from injury. Drew Thorpe's coming back. Mason Adams, Kai Bush, all coming back from major surgery last season. It's going to get a little bit muddy in 2026. Spring training will probably have a lot to say about it. But what do you guys think? Any surprises that you could foresee this coming season as far as who ends up being a part of that starting rotation for the White Sox pitching staff this year? Let us know in the comments below. And we're going to move right on along here as we talk about Will Venable and the progress that the White Sox made in his first year as manager and what that kind of means for the state of the rebuild here for the White Sox. Obviously, he was brought in to replace the duo of manager staff that the White Sox had in 2024 when we had that infamous 121 loss season, just a ridiculous season of futility for the Chicago White Sox, record setting in the just horridness that we saw as far as the win-loss column was concerned. Came in, still lost 100 games, and here we are talking about he ended up getting Manager of the Year votes in the American League just based on the 19-game jump that the White Sox were able to make. So to White Sox fans out there, we'll talk about that. Will Venable received some votes for American League Manager of the Year. How are we feeling about that one, White Sox fans? I personally think he did a spectacular job, even with the poor win-loss record, it was obviously still that major improvement. Thought he did a spectacular job with the lineup and with the talent that he was basically given. I think he really did get the most out of what the White Sox had to offer to him as the manager here. And does the signing of Will Venable and the fact that his first season did go better than many probably were expecting the White Sox to do last season prove that the rebuild is heading in the right direction? Maybe they're a little bit closer to being back to 500 ball, and then maybe after that into playoff conversations. About how close can the White Sox reasonably be considered at this point? Let us know you guys' thoughts in the comment section below as we then head to the next article that we've got here, as The Score recently posted their opinion piece on one free agent to look for every American League team. And this one was definitely interesting, definitely a very White Sox-esque signing, potentially on the horizon, as Zach Littell, linked to the Chicago White Sox, is another guy. We just talked about that starting rotation earlier. Why not muddy the waters a little bit more and add Littell, who a career sub 400 ERA guy, career ERA of 3.88, a guy that is usually right just below that 4.0 mark for his ERA pretty much season to season. Had 1 or 2 years where he was above it, and even still it was just barely. Hasn't had very many seasons where he was drastically below that mark. Fairly consistently right around there for most of his career. Last season, 130 strikeouts. It was the second most of his entire career. The most actually being the previous season in Tampa in 2024. So he's a guy that's starting to really lock in with some of that strikeout stuff. And a guy that you're not going to have to break the bank for. A guy that's probably going to be well within the White Sox budget and can certainly be someone that can step in and give you some serious innings. Just turned 30 years old. A veteran presence to come in and be a real staple for the starting rotation if they decide to go that route. It certainly locks in another name for the starting rotation this coming year. Probably right behind Davis Martin and Shane Smith. If you do decide to call up some rookies, you got some fallback guys that can certainly give you quality innings and really pick up the slack if those rookies need a little bit more rest than, say, some of the other veterans that you'd have coming out of the bullpen and in your rotation to begin with. But yeah, Zach Littell, linked to the Chicago White Sox. How would you guys feel about that one? Let us know in the comments section as we head to our final piece here. Tuesday, it's official. They'll do the official pulling for the draft lottery. The Chicago White Sox still currently with the best odds to land the #1 pick in the draft. And there's a couple of different directions they could go. Obviously, Rock Cholowski, widely considered the #1 prospect, considered a near generational type shortstop talent, a guy who just came off a season where in just 66 collegiate games for UCLA, he hit .353, 23 home runs, 1,100 OPS, batted in 74 runs. I mean, just a phenomenal offensive performer with really spectacular defensive highlights as well at shortstop for UCLA. A guy that you project to be a very quick runner through the minor league system who could really impact a major league ball club quickly. Might give you some more flexibility in that infield. He's a guy that you figure plugs right into shortstop. Maybe you move Montgomery over to third base. And then, obviously, you got to figure out what you're doing with Chase Mydroth, with Lenyn Sosa, and with Miguel Vargas then at that point. Is he just locked in as your first baseman? Do he and Lenyn Sosa rotate? What do you do at that point? But there is still some debate. Obviously, just because you have the best odds doesn't mean that anything is set in stone. There's a couple of really high-end shortstop prospects in this upcoming draft. Justin LeBron out of Alabama. Jacob Lombard, considered the highest ceiling caliber guy, but a kid that's coming right out of high school. Sometimes those ceilings not always panning out, and especially when it's a kid that you're really going to have to dedicate some time, as opposed to some of the more pro-ready prospects kind of at the top of that draft. Are the White Sox in a position, based on where they are, obviously just lost 100 games again, might be the team that's willing to, you know what, we can give you 4 to 5 years to develop before you become that player that we want you to be at the top of a draft like they're at. Obviously, best case scenario, Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. The ping pong balls fall our way and the White Sox are picking first, and they get to choose between any of these guys that they want. However, is something to consider that if they don't fall our way, I mean, they could fall as far down as seventh. Most likely fall, if they don't get one, is either 2 or 3, and you're picking between these top 3 guys. They've got a lot of options there. Could be an exciting draft here. Hopefully everything goes our way and we get that number 1 pick. But yeah, until next time, this has been White Sox Daily, and we'll see you guys next week.